people have misunderstood that. The normal video will not be affected. These are just extra content, really, to see how it goes and see what we do. Now, this video is about vehicle to grid, which is what people chose as the topic last time. And it is quite interesting, actually, because there's been something in the media very recently, today in fact, about Tesla and someone else with a I think it was Wallbox. Excuse me. I think it is something which ultimately a lot of people are interested in. If you don't know what vehicle to grid is, then if I can figure out how to do editing on the fly, here we go. Basically, when you plug your car into your house, the grid powers your car. It goes through your house and you charge your car, just like your phone. You plug your phone in, and it's effectively grid to phone. So, vehicle to grid is just what it sounds like. It's the opposite to that. It is where your car's battery, the big battery in an EV, powers the house, and if you want, you can export back to the grid. So you can, it's almost like solar panels. You can make money off it if you charge it when it's cheap and then send back to the grid when it's not, or you can power the house with it. It's basically like a home battery, but on wheels. So that's what vehicle to grid is. Whether or not it's any use, this is the problem. I think it's all down to cost. Absolutely. Cost is everything. I mean, let me show you this, which I noticed today, called the Wallbox Quasar. This is a new charger, which apparently has been announced. I don't know when it's coming out, probably not shortly, and they haven't said what the prices will be yet either. But according to this, it's effectively a vehicle to grid charger, but the price is said to be around $4,000. $4,000. I don't know if that's typical, so if anybody does know, wait a minute, someone can hear something in the background, try that. Sorry, audio problems. I think I was talking to myself through the desktop audio, but back on the vehicle to grid thing. Hopefully the echo's gone now, please tell me if it has or not. Professional, here we are. The Quasar box, $4,000 for a vehicle to grid system. That is too much for me because you're not that far off a proper home battery. And I think ultimately the one thing that a home battery gives you is it's fixed, it's never going anywhere, and it makes full use of the grid. It charges when it wants, it discharges when it wants as well. Has the audio problem gone now? I believe it has. Thank you. Yeah, so it's way more efficient, obviously, to have a home battery because it never moves. One, be plugged in to power the house, and a few other days as well because we work different shift patterns. She would then go to work in the same car. So the car's never here for us under normal circumstances, apart from maybe weekend, to make full use of it. And I know a lot of people will have that issue in terms of the work during the day. So you can't use the battery during the daytime. Not a major disaster. It's peak time you want to concentrate on. But then there's the thing of, I think it's 40-45% of UK households don't have off-road parking. Now that doesn't mean it's not useful, because obviously there's plenty of people that do, but it reduces the amount of people it's useful to. But for me, again, if you can get it in your house, if you have an off-road, a drive to park your car in, it's all down to the cost. This Wallbox Quasar thing at $4,000, that's, let's face it, it's going to be £3,500-4,000 in the UK. You might as well just spend a little bit extra, and it won't be that much more for a proper home battery. If anybody knows of a proper price of a vehicle to grid system, not just that wall box, then please do let me know. But ultimately, this is I suppose the test. If for a couple of £100 you could get a vehicle to grid system and it worked with your car, who wouldn't do that? It's something you can make use of. But from what I can tell, that it's a couple of £1,000 or more for a basic vehicle to grid system at the moment for what is basically just an inverter, as far as I know. I'm no engineer, but it's down to that. The home battery is by far more efficient. The car as a vehicle to grid battery, a home battery that way, it depends on what you're going to use, I suppose. I don't know. Is it something that you would go for? Do you work at home and therefore it would make sense? But then what's the point in having a car that's going to be sat there as a home battery? You might as well buy a cheaper car and a bigger home battery. And remember, this is based on the price of batteries now. In 5 years, maybe 10 years, you'll probably be able to get a home battery, decent size, 7 or 8 kilowatts, for example, kilowatt hours, for half the price of today, which then means that it's not worth it as much. It's a nice to have. Some people will do it just because you can, and you think, oh, I've got a bit of spare money, I'll do it. But you know, if you're on the comment section, if you're watching this when it's not live, then please do let me know in the comments below whether or not this is resonating with you. I do like vehicle to grid as a technology, and apparently Tesla are I've got that built into the Model 3s. They haven't released it yet. In theory, they can just do a software update and everyone gets it. But then you need something to, obviously, on the house side, to do it all at that end. It's that cost that is a big unknown. At the moment, the only car that can do it is the Nissan Leaf, or the ENV 200 van, of course. So there's only two cars, one car really, that does it at the moment. Oh, Edward Borg, I believe I owe you a big thank you. You have just donated €10 to the channel. I'd completely forgotten about that. If anybody wants to do a donation, then by all means. But I am not asking for that. If you want to, fine. If you know, give it to charity if you've got a few quid spare. That's what I generally say at the moment. But yes, thank you very much for that one. It's just caught me by surprise. But in terms of vehicle to grid, going back to that, I think it needs to be in the hundreds to make sense. If you spend £2,000 on a vehicle to grid system, it's going to take you a hell of a long time to get your money back. And then, of course, you know, things change. You get a different job. All of a sudden, you're working at different times, and you're missing peak rate. It doesn't make sense anymore. So, if it's a cheap edition or a no-cost edition, brilliant. I think vehicle to grid makes every sense in the world. As an emergency backup, yes, I guess that makes sense. But for me, it's the home battery that changes things. If a home battery is the same cost as the hardware to enable vehicle to grid, you might as well just get a home battery that's permanently there. That's your emergency backup. So what do you think? If you're in the live chat, is this something which you've thought about getting? Or in fact, I know someone that does have it on a test at the moment. I don't think he's here right now, but you know, has anyone any experience of this, or even of a home battery? And remember, when I say a home battery, I don't mean a Tesla Powerwall that's 2 or 3 grand more than maybe others out there. So they are getting cheaper. Right, let's have a quick look in the live chat, because I am keen to keep this video and future live videos below the half-hour threshold. Vehicle to grid costing beyond £1,000 is not acceptable. Unfortunately, CHAdeMO connectors alone can cost £800. So that for me, like you say, it's pricing itself out of being usable. Personally, I avoid anything that does not pay back within warranty. Yes, I suppose that's something there. We'll use it in the Philippine Islands to power non-grid solar. So yeah, I suppose I'm thinking specifically in the UK. There will be obviously places out there that will make a lot of sense, I suppose. Better to put up some solar and store it in car when you can. It requires more tech in the house, which is expensive. It's pointless. Grid never goes down unless you live rural, and even then, yeah, I mean, I live quite rural, but not in the sticks, as it were. I live, you know, close to towns, and we did go through a period for a year where we had 2 or 3 hour power cuts, like half a dozen in a month. But I'm guessing that was a problem as opposed to anything else. But yeah, at the moment it wouldn't really do anything if we had it. Like I say, how often in the UK do we have a power cut? And even then, you'd have to have extra hardware to enable that, not just plug your car in. Vehicle to home would be a better option, surely. What, than a home battery? Well, if it's financially costing you almost as much as home battery, no, that's my point. I mean, I like vehicle to grid as a technology, just the cost for me doesn't seem to be there. I have had Powervault 3 last year, and they're useless. Elaborate, please. I don't know why. Electricity is so cheap it would take 20 years to pay it back. Have solar, which needed subsidy to make sense. Maybe. There's room for vehicle to grid and home batteries. Cost and usability a big factor. Yes, that's the thing. Is the cost. It's all down. What isn't? What isn't? But I wouldn't pay anything in 4 figures for vehicle to grid. Low hundreds for me. Because any more than that, like I say, it wouldn't really make that much sense. And I mean, it wouldn't for us, because like I say, our car's out more than it's in. So I guess there's that, depending on what you work. But then to have a car at home the whole time, you might as well just not have a car, I suppose. Although, if you can get a really, really cheap Leaf for like 4 or 5 grand, is that a cheap home battery? What about battery degradation? It's not meant to affect, from the studies I've read, there's no battery degradation on using your car in that way. In fact, some of them say it actually helped the battery. Japan has earthquakes of a magnitude more than most. So yeah, Japan, I believe, have to have vehicle to grid enabled. That's probably why Nissan do it as standard, because it's a good backup, obviously, if you have something like an earthquake. They are not going to build power stations. They will use cars for the power. I know what you're saying, but I would personally prefer home batteries rather than the car, because the car is only plugged in occasionally. I guess if it's an emergency you can do that, but a home battery is designed for this purpose. The car isn't. You'd have to make sure that it's always plugged in, literally, to make use of it. Our power went out here in Boston, Massachusetts last Friday during a storm. 3 hours around bedtime and freaked out the kids. Would have been a big advantage to use a 120 kilowatt hour sat in the driveway. Yeah, but it'd be a bigger advantage to have a 10 kilowatt hour battery in your house, I guess, because then if that power goes off and someone's at work, it's useless to you. So I guess this is where that cost ratio comes in. Vehicle to grid in car likely cheap, but in house not the case. I'm in two minds with the EV, as Dad has a Tesla, but I have a diesel car at the moment because of the distance I travel on a normal week outside of lockdown. Yeah, the distance is something which will disappear over time. In 5 years from now, 10 certainly, what we consider long range in EV terms now will be normal range. So it depends. I mean, for me, you could potentially save a ton of money. So yeah, you might lose a bit of time. You might have to stop off for 10 minutes, but if you're saving a couple £100 a month or more, it might be worth it. The one thing I'd like everyone to answer, actually, whether it's live or not, something which a few people will remember, a Harry Enfield sketch. When we get vehicle to grid, are we going to end up with people like this? Lecky spongers. Those who basically will visit someone's house and go, hi, can I borrow your charger? Basically, someone will charge at work, charge at someone's house, and then put it into their house and sell it back to the grid again. Basically, are we going to end up with people literally, lecky spongers, sponging electricity from other people? It will happen, won't it? People will do things like that to save 50p, especially if there's a free charger near them. You can guarantee they'll charge up and then go home. It may even be a thing. So yeah, do you think it will be a new cultural phenomenon, as it were? Like charging your phone somewhere else, but much, much bigger. Right. Is the whole point of this not to help the grid when the uptake of BEVs increases and demand is bigger? Yeah, but that's what vehicle to grid gives you. It helps the grid out. But if batteries are so cheap to the point where you can get a home battery, which helps the grid way more than a car that's sometimes plugged in, that's what I'm kind of thinking about here. Is home battery a better alternative and ultimately not that much more expensive? Because at the moment, everything I find that's not tied to a lease or anything is expensive to install to enable that vehicle to grid thing. So why not just spend a little bit more and get a proper home battery, especially if you have solar panels? The car battery is 4 to 5 times bigger than a Powerwall, and the idea it could be plugged in at the workplace too. A workplace would just have a bigger battery. I mean, the average house in the UK, I think, uses 10 to 12 kilowatt hours of battery, I think. Something like that. So an 8 kilowatt hour battery would be more than enough to sustain a few hours of blackout. Same with the factory. So I suppose, is it worth spending a lot of money on what is an emergency backup for the rare times it happens? I personally think a home battery is a better solution, because especially when you have things like Octopus Agile tariff that fluctuates every half hour. If you get home and you've missed the cheap bits, then you're going to plug your car in and miss out on that, if you like, or it's going to be done in reverse rather. So it needs testing, and it is being tested at the moment. I think vehicle to grid will become a thing, but I think home batteries will surpass the need for it when they get cheaper. While in theory I'm in favour of vehicle to grid, people tend to vote with their wallet. If it's not initially affordable, no amount of potential saving are going to make the deal. Exactly. If someone said to me, you can have vehicle to grid on my Model 3 or the Leaf beforehand, but it's going to cost you £2.5 to enable it, as in to get the hardware in the house, nah, I don't think so. I'd rather put that towards solar or a proper home battery. I would not charge at work without written permission, otherwise it is theft. No, but a lot of people I know that do charge at work pay a monthly fee, like a tenner a month. But you know what I'm saying. I'm not on about people. Well, people could steal electricity, but people will use a free charger at a supermarket because it'll save them 20p when they go home. Or they'll visit a friend and say, can I borrow your charger? You know, when everyone's got EVs. It'll become a thing, I guarantee it. Right, railway electrification engineer here. Would love to see vehicle to grid connecting to railway power supply. Helps with peak loads, then railway system can charge cars back up during the day. But that relies on cars always being plugged in. And they're not, that's my problem. When you're at work, it's not plugged in. If you don't plug it in when you get back, if you forget to plug it in when you get, you know, there's too many variables here that mean that car isn't plugged in. You know, if I get home and somebody's parked in the drive visiting us, then I'm going to have to wait before I can plug it in. A home battery is always there, and if it's not that much more expensive, why not go for it? Oh, excuse me. Right, we got another quarter of an hour left, so any questions, fire them out. Vehicle to grid related. Let me go through a few more questions. Tesla and China are and will bring the packs prices down by the economy of scale. 5 years or less, BYD China reigns in battery packs manufacturing. Yeah, the batteries are getting cheaper all the time. Emergency backups are never good value till you need them. Good point. But then an emergency backup isn't that usable if it's on wheels and someone's driving your emergency backup, whereas a home battery is. So I guess there's the gamble there, isn't it? If you spent all that money on vehicle to grid as a backup and then someone just happened to be driving it when the power went off, you kind of feel a bit annoyed. Home batteries do make sense, absolutely. I would love a home battery. Who wouldn't? It's just price. Like anything in it, I'd love solar. Beside Tesla Powerwall, what home battery would you go for? Well, there are several out there. I plan on doing something about this in the future. For now, go to Eon's website. They're doing 0% finance on a home battery at the moment. That might be worth a look. But what if grid scale batteries take off? Home battery could be worthless. Not really, because, well, it wouldn't be worthless if you have solar, because then you can keep power that otherwise would be sent back to the grid yourself and use it during the night. So I guess home batteries make more sense with solar and as a backup if you really needed it. Is your standard range plus enough to travel around Europe? Long range would be better, no? Well, yes, it would, but if I can do, let's say, 180 miles between rapid stops, that's got to be, you know, 2 or 3 hours worth of driving, depending on what you're driving through and whatnot. So long range, basically, yes, it would be a little bit easier and quicker, but then it's like, I'm willing to spend another £9,000 for the 2 or 3 trips a year where it may save me a bit of time. Otherwise, I'm paying for a massive battery and almost never using that extra bit of battery. So if you've got the money, absolutely, but for me, it's enough. Oh, no, Andy, I'm missing the point. Good, this is what we're doing this for. Tesla want to use the plugged-in cars to sell electricity to the grid. They will give you the vehicle-to-grid box. They have developed AutoBidder software specifically for this. Yeah, if it's free, it makes sense. So that's what I said, it's all down to cost. If I can plug my car in with no extra cost to me and use it as a battery, then I'm all for that. But if I have to pay for that vehicle-to-grid hardware, then how much is it? If it's like that wall box I show you, I'll put the picture up again, this wall box Quasar, that basically does vehicle to grid, if the car supports it, of course. But according to that article on Inside EVs, the price is meant to be around $4,000, which is way too much, and that's basically a home battery. Right, let's do some more. 2 emergency backups then, one on wheels, one static. Or if you just get a bigger static one, you wouldn't need the wheel one. This is what I mean. The vehicle to grid is a good system, but will it be surpassed when home batteries are very common? Won't need to be plugged in with induction charger in your garage. I am doing a video about wireless charging and why I think it will never work. En masse, I mean. Because it's like how many people, 10 years ago had a Lumia phone and that could wirelessly charge, and you just never used it. If I had wireless charging in my garage and parked in my garage, brilliant. It would save me all of 10 seconds of not plugging the car in. But what if I wanted to park on my drive? I'd have to get a wireless charging pad installed there as well. Or if I parked on the other side of my drive, I'd have to literally litter my property with wireless charging pads to make it as flexible as a physical lead, all for the sake of saving 10 or 15 seconds of plugging a car in. But I digress. That will be for another video. Home battery and car battery to grid makes sense. I have emergency backup only when I want to turn the grid off. When I visited the Google campus, dozens of cars were plugged in. In 10 years from now, many work cars will probably be plugged in. Google is probably the most advanced workplace, though, to be fair. I mean, my work is never going to have that. We're nowhere near the car park, for one, but I get your point. But then if it's really cheap to install batteries in the workplace that are there day and night, weekends as well, then I would probably do that as a business owner. 100% solar needs a home battery. Yep. It's just an initial investment, I suppose. I guess in theory it's possible to make 10% of all car capacity available for national storage grid. Not exactly on the horizon though, but could happen. It could, yes. But I think the trouble is, I think a lot of these vehicle to grid guesses and predictions in terms of how much it will help the grid are based on today's technology and prices. So if a home battery is half the price it is today, then vehicle to grid becomes kind of semi-pointless because people will just litter their houses with home batteries. Battery packs in the used Leafs can be worth more than the car after totaled in accidents here in America. Yes, absolutely. I've seen accident damaged Nissan Leafs go for the same as a fully working one, bizarrely, because people just want the batteries out of them. And then they are obviously very big batteries. Even if you've got a bit of degradation there, they're still a lot bigger than your typical home battery. Do Octopus do home batteries? I can't tell you. I would do vehicle to grid if I could make money from selling at high rate and charging at cheap rate. But would you spend, if you could make £10 a month from that, hell, let's say 50 quid a month, would you spend £1,500 to get the hardware? I probably wouldn't. Your EV in the garage or driveway can be your energy supply. Well, you need an energy supply at some point because as soon as your car's flat, where does it get its battery from? But I get what you're saying. Octopus doesn't do batteries. No, it doesn't at the moment. Wireless charging is a terrible idea, waste of energy. I believe it can be made extremely efficient, but I kind of agree with you. Induction charging efficiency is very poor. I do not think vehicle to grid will work in emergencies because if you give power to the grid, when the grid loses power, they will stop your vehicle to grid as a safety feature, just like a home battery. I mean, there's a simple relay you can get in place and a bit of wiring in your house. Even if you had a home battery, you have to have something else in place to enable the power to come back on again if there's a power grid blackout. Just like the Tesla Powerwall, even with the gateway, is it called? The power goes off and then several seconds later it will come back on again. So you're never going to have uninterruptible power there. Don't retrofit anything. China and Tesla are putting bi-directional wireless charging capacity in the vehicles at assembly. China already does, Tesla will. As are Nissan. Just looking at Eon's solar and battery deal now, very tempting. Well, I can't say anything, just don't rush into things. 100% solar does not need battery. Solar is cheap, batteries are expensive. It depends on the payback and how much you're spending on the batteries. Most people look at a Tesla Powerwall and think that's how much home batteries cost, and it is not the case. But yeah, at the moment, it's a significant investment. May have missed it, but what do other countries do about vehicle to grid? I don't think anybody does at the moment. Japan, for those that don't know, I believe this is correct. They, by law, have to have vehicle to grid as an option on the cars sold there. So in an emergency like an earthquake, they can use it as a backup. That's not so much the problem though. The problem for me is having the hardware on the house or the building to support vehicle to grid, that's the hard bit. I don't know what Japan are doing for that. If anybody does, let me know. Excuse me. In the UK, we currently use 60% less electricity than we did in 2002. If we swapped all cars in the UK for electric, the national grid say our electricity usage would go up by 10%. Yes, exactly. People think we're going to need a load of extra power generation with EVs. We're not. Hardware will be in the car already. Yeah, probably. I mean, I spoke to a battery engineer recently, and I asked him about vehicle to battery grid, and he said, let me see if I can find the message here. I don't think he's particularly a fan of it, if I'm honest. It's just a 400 volt DC to 230 inverter. That's effectively all vehicle to grid is. It's not. It's quite straightforward and easy to do. Powerwall is seamless, instantly takes over. That's not what I saw on the fully charged video. They turned the power off at the wall, and a few seconds later it came on. So is that changed now, or is that depending on the installation? Vehicle to grid is nice, but sod's law, when you need it, your battery will be flat, or your other half has took the car out. Not practical or dependable in an emergency. This is my point. It's relying on something which effectively can drive away. Yeah, if it was £100 option, I'd do it. If it was £1,000 option, I probably wouldn't. If it was any more than that, I definitely wouldn't. We've only got a few minutes left, guys, so get your questions in. There will be another live stream as scheduled on Monday at 7 o'clock, Wednesday at 7 o'clock, and the normal video, the edited one if you like, will go up at 3:30 on Friday, as it has done for many years. So after, I don't know, maybe a month of this, I'll see if it's worth it, because if it's not helping me out in terms of extra subscribers, or it's interesting, or revenue, or anything like that, there's probably no point in doing a lot of live streams, because they don't tend to be that popular. But we'll see what happens. All right, a few more questions now. Manufacturers in China and Japan are vehicle to grid leaders of the world. People in America still ask me where I charge my leaf in. Well, yeah. Annoyingly, Gen 1 Nissans in UK are not vehicle to grid ready, but it's just a licensing problem, and if you know how the car can be hacked to enable it, i.e. it's not a hardware issue, how frustrating. You need a gateway 2 for the Powerwall. Yes. I mean, it's basically, I've seen a relay, like an £80 relay, and then a bit of extra wiring, granted, but the gateway 2 to enable that power during a blackout, what is it, £1,100, £1,200? Seems an awful lot of money just for the random rare cases you have a blackout, unless you live in Australia or something like that. Hope Octopus are not using Powerwall. They're 6% efficient at best. I don't believe they are. Let's say you can output 10 kilowatts for 2 hours per day, 20 kilowatt hour per day, only a quarter of the battery. Yeah, I guess. Go and watch Zach and Jesse on Now You Know talk about the upcoming battery day. They talk a lot about vehicle to grid with some really good info. I mean, the vehicle to grid I think is a great technology, and if it's an easy, no cost or cheap option, why wouldn't you do it? I just think that people are thinking it's going to solve all energy problems when it's not, because half of the time the car isn't plugged in, it's not there. But you know, if it's £100 charger, whatever, to enable it for your house, absolutely, I'm all for it. I think solar and home battery partly depends on the size of the array. Yeah, bigger the better. If you can produce more electricity than you readily need, or produce it when you're not in, then home battery makes more sense, I guess. I like your channel. If I was to get an EV for local travelling, would you recommend Nissan Leaf? Yeah, absolutely. New or used. There's lots of different ones, so budget is key. Right, we're approaching half an hour, so I'm going to end the stream now. So thanks for watching, guys. As usual, I will see you on Monday live at 7 o'clock.